It was a winter evening, and the snow had transformed our quiet suburban neighborhood into a pristine, peaceful wonderland. My parents had left for a holiday party, entrusting me, a teenager, with the responsibility of staying home alone. I was more than happy to have the house to myself. The evening stretched before me, a canvas of infinite possibilities. I had plans to binge-watch movies, indulge in junk food, and enjoy the blissful silence of solitude. But little did I know, the silence itself would become my greatest source of terror. The night began as expected. I settled on the couch in the dimly lit living room, blankets piled around me, and the television remote in hand. As I lost myself in the world of movies, the hours passed by unnoticed. Around midnight, I decided to take a break and venture into the kitchen for a snack. I paused for a moment to enjoy the silence, a silence so profound that it seemed to press against my eardrums. But then I heard it, a soft, distant sound that sent a shiver down my spine. At first, I thought it was just the house settling or the wind outside. But as I listened, I realized it was something far more unsettling. It was the faint sound of laughter, a child's laughter. My heart raced as I strained to locate the source of the sound. The laughter seemed to echo from the upstairs hallway, as if a child were playing in my parents' room. The logical part of my mind told me it was a figment of my imagination, a trick of the wind, or perhaps a neighbor's child playing outside. But the unease gnawing at me compelled me to investigate. With cautious steps, I climbed the stairs and reached the hallway. The laughter had grown louder, more distinct. It was unmistakably coming from my parents' room. I pushed the door open slowly, expecting to find nothing but an empty room. But what I saw made my blood run cold. There, in the dimly lit room, stood a child, a pale, spectral figure with dark, hollow eyes. The child's laughter had transformed into an eerie, echoing giggle that filled the room. I stumbled back in horror, my heart pounding. I wanted to scream, to run, but my limbs felt heavy, as if weighed down by an invisible force. The child extended a small, frail hand toward me, and I could see that it was translucent, its form wavering like a ghost. It beckoned me with a mournful expression, as if seeking comfort. "Help me," it whispered, its voice a faint, haunting plea. The fear was suffocating, but my instincts urged me to respond with kindness rather than terror. I reached out to the child, my hand trembling, and as our fingers touched, the room was filled with blinding light. When the light dissipated, the child was gone, leaving behind a sense of peace and serenity that had replaced the fear. The laughter had ceased, and the house was once again silent. My parents returned home later that night, and I hesitated to share my bizarre encounter with them, fearing they would think I had imagined it all. But as I watched them, I couldn't help but wonder about the child, the echoes of silence that had touched my life that night. To this day, I can't explain what happened, but I've come to believe that sometimes the silence holds secrets beyond our understanding. And in that silence, I had encountered something both eerie and beautiful, an enigma that would forever linger in my thoughts.
My parents had gone away for the weekend, leaving me home alone in our old, creaky house. It was a stormy night, and as the wind howled outside, I tried to find comfort in the warmth of our cozy living room. Little did I know that the real terror lay within these walls. I was nestled on the couch, engrossed in a book, when I heard it, the faintest of whispers. It was so soft that at first I thought it was my imagination playing tricks on me. But then it came again, more distinct this time. I set the book aside and strained to listen. The whispers seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, as if the very house were speaking secrets to me. The words were unintelligible, a jumble of voices, like a cacophony of ghosts trapped within the walls. Fear gripped me, and I decided to investigate. I moved cautiously through the darkened house, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The whispers grew louder, leading me to a door in the hallway that I had never noticed before. As I opened the door, a gust of icy air rushed out, chilling me to the bone. Inside was a small, forgotten room, its walls covered in strange symbols and drawings. At the center of the room, an old, dusty mirror stood, reflecting only darkness. The whispers now emanated from the mirror, forming words that sent shivers down my spine. "Help us," they pleaded. "Release us from this prison." I stumbled back, unable to tear my gaze away from the mirror. It seemed to ripple and shift, as if a portal to another world lay just beyond the glass. Desperation and terror consumed me, and I knew that I had to break free from the mirror's hold. I reached for the nearest object, a candlestick, and struck the mirror with all my strength. With a deafening shatter, the mirror fractured and a blinding light burst forth. The whispers grew frantic, their voices a chorus of agony. And then, silence. I was left standing in a shattered room, the mirror now a shattered relic. The whispers had ceased, and the oppressive presence that had gripped the house had lifted. Exhausted and shaken, I cleaned up the shattered glass and symbols, sealing off the room once and for all. The house returned to its usual quiet, and the storm outside had passed. My parents returned, unaware of the horrors I had witnessed. I chose not to tell them for fear of burdening them with the truth. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the whispers in the walls would forever haunt my memories, a chilling reminder of the night I spent home alone, facing a terror that defied explanation.
It was a Friday night, and my parents had left for a weekend getaway, leaving me home alone in our isolated farmhouse. It was the perfect opportunity to enjoy some peace and solitude, or so I thought. The house stood at the edge of a dense forest, its nearest neighbor miles away. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I settled into the living room, the warm glow of the fireplace casting dancing shadows across the room. I had just begun to lose myself in a novel when I heard it, a faint scratching sound like claws against wood. I dismissed it as the wind or some small animal outside, but then it came again, more insistent this time. Curiosity compelled me to investigate. I grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the darkened hallway. The scratching seemed to be coming from the front door, and I could see the faint outline of something moving on the other side. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding, and swung the door open, expecting to find a stray dog or perhaps a raccoon. But what I saw froze me in my tracks. There, on the doorstep, stood a figure shrouded in darkness, its form indistinct. It had no discernible features, just an amorphous silhouette that seemed to absorb the feeble light of my flashlight. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure emitted a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. It slowly began to step inside, its movements jagged and unnatural. Fear surged through me, and I slammed the door shut, bolting it with trembling hands. The figure pounded on the door, emitting an otherworldly, inhuman shriek that reverberated through the house. I retreated further into the house, frantically searching for a phone to call for help. But the moment I picked up the landline, I heard a voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Don't be afraid," it whispered. "I mean you no harm." I hesitated, my fear warring with a desperate desire to understand what was happening. "Who are you?" I stammered. The voice introduced itself as the Wanderer, an entity that had been wandering the earth for centuries, seeking a way to escape its cursed existence. It explained that it had been drawn to my home by a mysterious force, a force that promised to release it from its eternal torment. As I listened, a chilling realization washed over me. The entity sought to transfer its curse to me, to bind me to this house as it had been bound for centuries. Desperation seized me, and I refused to comply with its demands. I searched the house for anything that could repel the entity, settling on a small crucifix left behind by my grandmother. I brandished the crucifix, reciting a prayer, and the entity let out a blood-curdling scream, its form contorting and writhing in pain. It backed away from the door, retreating into the darkness from whence it had come. For hours, I kept the crucifix at the ready, the house silent once more. The entity never returned that night, and as dawn broke, I realized that I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. When my parents returned, I shared the harrowing tale of the midnight visitor. They listened in disbelief, and while they couldn't fully comprehend the supernatural encounter I had experienced, they believed my account. We moved away from that farmhouse, leaving behind the horrors of that night. But the memory of the midnight visitor would forever haunt my dreams, a reminder that even in the most isolated places, unseen forces may lurk, waiting for an opportunity to cross into our world.